Hello and welcome to NextOppSocial. We are your hosts, Richelle Wright and Joanne Buford. We believe entrepreneurship is empowerment, and we are committed to the development and progress of entrepreneurs, providing you with the information you need to build thriving businesses. So today we're talking about a little more around the concept of having a purpose, principles, mission, and a genuine business that within that is helping you know who you want to serve, who you want to go into business with, so that you are attracting those clients and they are bringing themselves to you, right? And making this a little bit easier as well. Joanne and I were just speaking about it before we hit record here on the episode. And so I'm going to let him dive into it a little bit more. But as he had mentioned too before episode, we've been talking about this within NextOppSocial. Who do we want to serve, right? Who do we want our audience to be? So we figured it would be a good conversation for today, because if it applies to us, it probably applies to you.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And, I get really excited about this topic because it's a great time to be an entrepreneur right now, right? Despite the trials and tribulations, look, it's not sunny for everyone out there. But on the flip side, we're literally in a period of time where we have approximately 500,000 businesses being launched on a monthly basis in the United States of America. And so I always caution people, look, it's not doomsday everywhere all the time, right? There are people who've made decisions to pivot, do what they need to do to be successful. And what I'm finding with a lot of these startups is they've made up in their mind conceptually that being an entrepreneur is a good thing. They want to start a business. They find maybe a product or service, something catches their attention, and they say, no, I'm gonna go out and do that. But what inevitably ends up happening is a couple things. Number one, they find themselves earning money, right? They're leaning in, they're acquiring clients, but they're having a hard time with branding. They're having a hard time with growth. They're having a hard time gaining traction. It's like their today is no different than yesterday, and their tomorrow is going to be no different than today, right? I oftentimes come across individuals who, once again, are generating revenues, but they start getting fatigued. They start getting tired. They start feeling some kind of way about the business that they're in. And, when I hear that, I immediately start thinking about a couple things that became very salient for me recently. And the first being, and I've said this time and time again, it's hard to put your life's energies behind a compromise, right? It's so absolutely important that you clearly define who you want to serve, right? We talk about target marketing oftentimes from the standpoint, okay, who wants my product? Who wants my service? So let me organize my life. Let me organize my resources in such a way to cater to them. But a lot of times people really should reverse engineer that and ask themselves rather, who do you want to serve, right? Who do you get excited about working with? Who do you, when you wake up in the morning and you take inventory of your gifts and the things that get you excited, to give you a sense of fulfillment, who are the individuals who resonate with that, right? Synonym, anecdote, metaphor, okay, whatever, I'm tired. That I used earlier was a tuning fork. I firmly believe that in many respects, people are tuning forks, right? And look, audience, I know I'm getting a little bit nerdish on you, but follow me here, okay? I get it. But here's the thing. If you take two tuning forks and they're not comprised with the exact same alloys and exact same percentage, you can bang one tuning fork and the other one's not going to respond, right? Nothing's going to transpire. But if you take two tuning forks that are designed with the same alloy in the exact same proportion, and you take that tuning fork and you knock it on the table, I don't care if the other tuning fork is across the street, it's going to vibrate, it's going to resonate, right? Well, I think people operate in much the same way. If you want better clients, if you want a better experience, if you want to feel more fulfilled, ask yourself, how can I vibrate higher with the individuals that I really want to serve and that I really want to engage? And oftentimes that's where you can find your purpose. That's where you can find your energy or direction, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, sometimes businesses, and there might be people listening who develop businesses and ideas and concepts because they have already figured out who they want to serve, and maybe what they've come up with isn't clear enough or correct, or what that audience actually wants. Sometimes I see that the opposite, right? I have clients that'll be like, I'm a nutritionist or fitness coach for moms, right? Or new moms or things like that. Or I serve, these people. Like, I feel like I'm finding more people who are knowing who they want to serve, but they haven't done enough research on what that audience needs, right? As well. So I think they kind of go hand in hand a little bit too, because you have to be very, very clear on both, right?
Yeah.
Very, very clear on both. So knowing who you want, like if you're in a position right now where you're like, well, I know who I want to serve, but for some reason my offers are not sticking, my services are not, no one's signing up for these things. The reality is too, is just like humans and people in nature, maybe your audience is clear and maybe it's still clear and you still want to serve those people, but the needs of those people have evolved, or your business has evolved, and therefore your services need to evolve to keep meeting the needs of us, are, that audience is growing. I find that a lot with my own business. Like I have a lot or I have a good chunk of clients that I've had for many, many years, but the things that I'm offering them are not the same things that I offered 3 years ago. Right. And that's not just because the digital world has changed. It's because what I already did 3 years ago worked, and now their needs are different. Right. So I'm still clear on who I want to serve, but what I'm serving them has had to continuously evolve. And a lot of that has just been with, so much continuous communication around where are your pain points now, right? I know where they were 3 years ago, but where are they now? Right. Because they're not just, it's you can't anticipate these things staying the same. Just like with your business growing and evolving, the needs of your people are going to grow and evolve.
There's a lot of truth to that. But what if your clients have leveled up, or if their tastes have changed and now they're making requests of you that you don't have the skill set or talent for, or quite frankly, you can't get passionate about, you can't get up in the morning for it. Now, look, I'm very clear on some things, like you not having talent or skills, that's manageable. I mean, as entrepreneurs, learning and growing and evolving is something we have to do too, right? You can't be lazy. You have to be willing to take on new skills. I mean, we're directly compensated, correlate with the problems that we solve. The bigger the problems we solve, the greater our incomes are. It's really that simple at the end of the day, right? Now, part of that also means you have to be aware of who's willing to pay the most for those problems, right? Who values those problems you solve more. That's a big piece of it. The other thing that, I go back to is resonance, right? So what really kind of triggered this in my mind, I had to touch the subject matter, as I was sharing with you before, is a presentation that I gave yesterday with a gentleman. To say his name's Fred. I've gotten permission to air out who he is yet, but let's say the guy's name is Fred. And, I met with this gentleman via Zoom about a week ago, where he had an opportunity to listen in on an intra-organizational sales call, right? We wanted to give him some insight into our culture and who we're about. And it was different because we normally don't do that, right? When most people are introduced to you as an entrepreneur, you're leading with your product or service. But we decided to give people a little different look in terms of who we are and what we do. So instead, we led with our mission. We led with our purpose. We led with why we exist and, how we help people. We led with our vision statement. We led with the uplifting service agreement. Anyone who works with me know I have an uplifting service agreement that I employ in almost every business I'm involved in, right? We led with those things. And then we talked about who we wanted to serve, right? Why it was important that we serve that specific niche, that specific population. And I remember after that, a lot of my sales partners and a lot of my marketing partners were like, is this really going to work? Because we really didn't do a deep dive. Like, we didn't tell them specifically what we were going to do for him, right? And then we ended up meeting with Fred yesterday. And I mean, literally the first 30 seconds in, when we, broke down a small talk, began to engage, he said, before you say another word, whatever it is you're marketing, I'm buying. And I remember everyone in the Zoom chat was in shock, right? He said, look, the bottom line is, I can tell you all have a mission. You have a purpose, your principles, you have integrity. And he said, in so many words, Mr. Buford, I can tell that you in particular, you know who you are, whose you are, and what you're trying to accomplish. And my response was, well, number one, thank you, I accept that. But the success of my organization is not predicated upon me. Like, I make errors all the time. I'm far from perfect. I'm a very imperfect person, but I'm thankful that we have a mission, a purpose, and an uplifting service philosophy that other people can buy into. I'm thankful that the organization doesn't require that I'm perfect and that I'm some transcendent figure. What we bought into is the mission, purpose of what we do. We bought into serving a specific group of people and giving them fantastic experiences. And I'm very grateful that I'm surrounded by people who bought into that. And at the end of the day, he said, look, we don't need to talk anymore. Just lay it out. Whatever the cost is, I'm down because I want to participate in that. And there's something to be said for that, right? Apple is not trying to be all things to all people, right? They're not. Their price point tells you that. The way Apple has promoted their products over the years, it tells you that, right? If you're becoming a brand at some point, and it's not saying that you can be intellectually lazy, it's not saying you should rest on your laurels, but at some point you got to know what you stand for. You got to know who you are. If, me personally, use the example, right? Yeah, my clients have evolved a lot over time. They make requests of me every single day. And sometimes you got to be willing to say no. That's not me. This is how I roll. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm effective at. And you have to be okay with the fact that some people are going to sort themselves in and some are going to sort themselves out. I knew my business was going to grow when I started making that choice. And my business really started to take off and gain traction when I didn't have to make the choice anymore. People were making the choice for me. Right? So I was laying out the appetizers, the entrees, the beverages, right? I was laying out the meal and people were choosing whether they wanted to participate or not. And my business became so much easier. It became so much more enjoyable. I have so much more energy and enthusiasm for what it is that I do. And, I just believe that it's that vibration that's attracting the abundance that I'm enjoying in my business and personally in my life now. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. I think it can be tricky, right? Like with a little bit with what I was saying before, I don't want people to confuse evolving and shifting or growing or changing what you offer as in you just need to say yes to all the things because that's what people want. Or at the same time, you shouldn't say yes to all the things because you're worried if you don't say yes, you're leaving money on the table. I think that when you come from a place when you're doing it that way, then you're not aligning with a purpose and a mission and principles around your business, because then apparently things are not very clear. Mm-hmm. But if you are clear around those things and maybe some other services or things change, especially because if you're really committed to who you serve, right, as well. Yeah, I think that absolutely that can happen too. Is as entrepreneurs, we like new things too. We like getting involved in new things. We like the beginning parts of project. I not everyone. Some people like nitty gritty of details or too, but we like that same sort of like falling in love, excitement. That's kind of what it feels like when you start a business or you're working with something new. And the idea around almost doing that with your own business can be addicting, right? And if you're finding that you're shifting that too many times to meet these needs of customers or whatnot, then again, it's not aligned with purpose and mission. And I think that's different. But I do think it is an exciting thing for you to remember that your business can change, it can shift to keep meeting the needs of your people. And it might be something that you actually enjoy doing more than you did before. Right. So I think that that's something to just remember as well, too, that as long as it's rooted in how and the what and the why a little bit, maybe not so much the how, but the what and the why. I think that it can help you really sometimes get out of ruts and burnouts where things feel stagnant and stale too. That I think as entrepreneurs, we need a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I think creatives deal with that more than anyone else, right? Yeah. I know for me, it was kind of interesting when I first started out as an entrepreneur almost 20 years ago. It's amazing. Every time I say it, I was like, wow, 2 decades. In any respect, I was a creative and I didn't last long in corporate America, but I'm thankful for my experience in corporate America because that period of working in the banking industry and working within the financial services industry forced me to become a process person, right? Because what it taught me is that motivation doesn't really work, not long term, right? This need to feel motivated and inspired, that'll get you started. But at some point, it's the process that sets you free, right? And it's kind of weird because when I'm in my process brain, I'm a lot less creative. But that also creates predictability, right? Mm-hmm. It also creates, to the extent that you can say in entrepreneurship, you are quote unquote stable, right? Even though there's no such thing. Universal laws, everything is a movement, everything's changing. But it makes sure the furniture stays where I expect it to be, right? When you start falling in love with the process. And it also allows you to kind of sharpen the saw too when you fall in love with the process. I know for me as a creative, before relatively recently, right, I would start things all the time, but I very rarely would see them through, right? And it wasn't because I was afraid of the pain. It wasn't because because starting stuff is difficult too. But the process would bore the ish out of me, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll become disenchanted, want to do something different. But once I started falling in love with the process, remember the lessons I learned early on as an entrepreneur within the financial services industry, what I started learning to love is the results, right? For me, it's like akin to running, right? I'm at the stage now in my process where my 3rd mile, when I get to that 3rd mile, I need to catch my wind. Right? I'm waiting on the 2nd wind. And in that process, I'm heaving, I'm irritable. If I don't have my headphones on, listen to music, I'll even be cursing while I'm running. I know people be looking at me like, what's going on here? I'll be like, damn, this stop. When it's gonna stop? My calf is burning. And then I reach a point where the 2nd wind comes in, right? And then it's just smooth sailing, it's coasting. I can go another 2-3 miles and I'm not heaving anymore. I've just kind of fell into this rhythm. And it's like the coolest experience, right? When you get there. And I feel like an entrepreneur, it much is the exact same way. When you're creative, sometimes you don't stick around long enough to catch the 2nd wind. Mm-hmm. It's actually going to allow you to really go the distance like the way you need to. And that's something that, you can do one or two things. For me, that's why I'm such a huge process guy, because I know, to be transparent, I'm a flake. I know it, so I put processes in place to control myself. Else I'd be running around doing things all the time, right? Also, what I've learned to do is surround myself with people who quite frankly are process people, who are operations people, who get into the nitty gritty and they're cool with that, right? And that was like the greatest gift I could ever give myself, right? And quite frankly, the greatest gift I could give other people and the team around me is knowing, okay, this is my lane, this is who I am. We need to put people here in this lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
To offset it. And as an entrepreneur, like I had a conversation with an entrepreneur a couple of days ago, and it kind of irked me a little bit. Because I get it, right? When you're an entrepreneur, when you start growing from a team of me to a team of we, if you've been burned in the past, if people have taken advantage of you, or people haven't followed through, or people have done you wrong, right? There's a lack of distrust that kind of seeps into everything that you do, right? You start looking at things from an I perspective. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this. But you can't grow that way. You know, absent trust, absent being able to buy into something, you can't grow. You can't grow a nation that way, as evident about what's going on in our political environment right now. You can't build a family that way. You can't build a business that way. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to trust in a process beyond you. You have to be willing to trust in the people around you. You have to be willing to kind of let go of some things and just know that if you have the right habits, if you've bought into a mission and a purpose, at least my experience has been the universe will conspire in your favor. And you're going to be heaving. You're going to be tired. You're going to be pissy. You're going to be upset. You're going to be waking up. You're going to have tired, lagging eyes like I did when I woke up this morning. But when you get that second win, man, that's when the magic happens. Right. And that's what I would encourage entrepreneurs who are going through this process right now. Right. Give yourself time. And it's not always about the environment around you. Sometimes it really is you. Right. And some work that you have to do on yourself in terms of mindset and approach. And, you know, that's what I wanted to impart in this episode, right? That experience that I had with Fred. And for me, as soon as that call ended, I was like, that's how it's supposed to be. That's what's up, right? How do I put that on instant replay? Mm-hmm. Right? How do I scale that? That's what I started thinking. Like, okay, there's a lesson in this, right? And I think it's a lesson that people overlook. I mean, let's be real as I go on and on, right? You know, this is the top I get excited about because oftentimes entrepreneurs kind of ignore this part of the business. I can't tell you how many business owners I talk to and I ask them, what's your vision statement? And they don't have one. And they don't think it's important. You know, when I ask them, if you were to onboard somebody, client, employee, or business partner, what's the reason for being here beyond just earning a buck? Yeah. And they can't answer that question. I'm like, well, you need to understand that you're surrounding yourself with mercenaries. That's what you're doing. They're just there for $1. And there'll always be something on the other side of the fence that looks greener. Right or wrong, it will appear greener if that's all it is. It's just chasing money, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I think this piece is so absolutely important to get really clear on that. Not to be myopic, not to be intellectually or physically lazy. You have to evolve, you have to change, you have to be willing to grow. But also the flip side of it is sometimes you got to do a deep dive. I'll stop. I got like 2-3 other things. I'll stop.
Well, and I'm sure people are listening. You could probably pinpoint. It probably might even have been the reason why you got into business in the first place. But you can probably pinpoint 1 or 2 people that you had experiences with that you were like, I'd love to repeat that. If I could do that all the time, it'd be great. So if you're not currently, though, experiencing that with other clients or other prospects and things like that, and maybe you don't have this clear vision and mission and it all kind of feels muddled, go back to that experience like you've just explained, like with Fred. Go back to that experience and start your deep dive there. right? Why was this so great? Why did this work so well? Why did I enjoy this so much? Right. And I think that that's going to help you answer so many other questions moving forward. If you're, especially if right now you're constantly in this rut of just like going through the motions, they're not working, that sort of thing. Go pinpoint those examples and those people and those one, and there might only be one or two, truthfully, there might only be one or two of those seamless times that were really clear and worked really well, but you need to dissect those to understand how to repeat them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I also firmly believe too, this is something that I'd encourage entrepreneurs to do. Be honest with yourself. Take inventory of your skills. Take inventory of your experiences, right? I tend to believe people enjoy things they're good at, right? And oftentimes what I found is entrepreneurs get involved with certain business endeavors that their skill set really isn't suited for. Anyone who knows me, especially around middle school, and to a lesser extent in my high school years, I was introverted for real. Like, I was the type of person, I could walk into a room and I wouldn't talk to anybody and it'd be all good, because I was in my head. And I just sit back and kind of people watch and observe, and I'd smile, but I wasn't the most engaging person. I was like a brooding type of person, right? And to be honest, I still am that person to this day, but I developed the skills to communicate. I developed empathy. I developed the ability to read a room. Those things took time, right? But there were some other things that I brought to the table that allowed me to have success in almost every endeavor I'm involved in. Don't get caught up in trying to double down on your weaknesses. Don't get caught up in trying to improve in every area that you might suck in. Look, I'm not going to learn HTML. I'm not going to learn coding at this stage of the game. I'm just not, unless it just becomes some nerdy thing that I just decide I want to play around with and start reading about one day, which I just don't think is going to happen no time soon, right? If I'm a good speaker, I'm going to double down on that. I'm going to invest in that, right? There's a program that, I finally succumbed to. I've been getting this email from someone for the last 2 years. And I'm finally just going to pay for it. I'm going to invest in it. I've seen this enough times. This guy is where I want to be. He has the posture that I want to have. He has the presence I want to have. He's getting invited into spaces I want to get invited into. I got to do it, right? Be willing to make that investment in the skill sets and talents you already have too. And that'll take you places. It's something to be said for that too. If you're feeling stale in your business, it kind of reminds me of the difference between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and LeBron James and the Michael Jordans of the world. You listen to their stories, man, they studied their competition. And not only did they study their competition, they studied themselves. Like, they watched footage of themselves so they could improve upon the errors and mistakes they were making, right? Speaking coaches will oftentimes tell you, take out a recorder next time you're doing a speaking engagement or giving and record yourself and then play it back so you can actually listen to the and listen to the dead space and listen to words that you may have slurred or idiosyncratic kinks that you may have. Right? I know I have a couple of them, right? And so you can have an opportunity to improve those, so you can be intentional, right? Give yourself these projects to sharpen yourself, particularly if you're creative, so you don't get bored with the everyday rudimentary stuff that transpires.
Yeah. A little bit goes a long way. I know, especially as a creative, we get impatient and we want that improvement to happen quickly. And we often forget the journey, though, that it takes to get there and all the different things. I will say, to a certain degree, we have a lot of tools now that can help skip a lot of the steps. So that can be helpful.
Yeah.
But for people listening, what would be some of your suggestions as well around if people are not clear on who they want to serve? What are some steps they need to take to get clear on who they want to serve?
So the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is we have an internal bias, right? Look, get a coach, get a consultant, get a second or third party, somebody who will sit across the table and be honest with you, who's not vested in giving you the ear candy, right? If you have to pay them, fine. But find somebody to sit across the table who can sit and listen to you and find the incongruence, right? I'm slowly but surely being pushed into this direction. You already know that just hearing the word business consultant and coach used to make me cringe, right? My whole idea was I'm an entrepreneur that builds things. And if you want a little bit of guidance support, I'd give it to you. But I find myself slowly but surely moving in the direction where I'm coaching more than I ever have before. And for me, I have become very astute at listening to the incongruence. So a person says, well, this is what I'm passionate about, but I'm listening to you and you're talking about 2 or 3 other things. You need that. You need someone to point that out, right? You'll say, well, you want to serve this particular population, but the deeper the dive we go into, why do you want to serve them? Where were you? What motivates? You know, a question I like to ask individuals is, what's that thing that will get you so riled up that you can't sleep? What's that thing where you have a fight or flight moment, right? That generates such an emotional response that you can barely contain it. 9 times out of 10, the answer to that question is what you're really passionate about. And is really what you should be taking aim at, right? Go through that process. I like the Franklin Planner system. I still ride and die with it because when you buy the system, the first part of it is about defining your values. It's about defining your focus. It's about defining your principles. It's about asking questions like, if you died, when you die 20, 30 years from now, what do you want people to say at your funeral? Who do you want to be at your funeral? Because you know 90% of the people ain't coming, right? The weather's bad, they're not coming. So who do you want there regardless of the weather? Who really matters in your life, right? It forces you to ask questions like, what are the things that you've done in your life that you really enjoyed, you find fulfillment and satisfaction? It forces you to create congruence. 9 times out of 10, if you're bored with the thing that you're doing, if you're in a rut, something's not congruent. And you gotta take the time to do the dive, right? One of my business partners asked me the other day, he's like, man, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you crazy. Why are you getting up that early? And I was like, that 1 hour that I spend doing a deep dive in terms of what matters most to me, trust me, it creates another 3 hours of productivity. It creates 3 hours of productivity because I'm not thinking, I'm just executing, right? And there's congruence there. So I'm executing with energy and passion, right? I just gave a presentation. I've been up since 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't go to, entrepreneurs, when do you wash clothes? 12, 1 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah. Middle of the night. Yeah. I was going to say
seriously,
late. I had late.
Yeah. When do you wash dishes? When you finally clean up that spot on the floor that's been sitting there for 2 or 3 days, you're like, oh, this is nasty. I got to do something about this, right? So I was up doing those things and I was dragging. But that 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning wake up where I sat down and said, this is what matters to me. This is what my win looks like. And I immediately got amped for NextOppSocial, right? Because NextOppSocial is an extension of a lot of those things that I get excited about and that I sense of purpose. That's what I would encourage people to do. Get a coach, get a consultant, get somebody who will hold your feet to the fire, get a system in place, overcome your bias. The moment you feel like you know it all, even about yourself sometimes, you're dead in the water. Okay, you show me an entrepreneur that thinks they know it all, trust me, the bill comes due, right? You're gonna catch that L. You're gonna get blindsided by the things you don't know. So that's the other thing I would encourage people to do. On a more, I had to get this out. So Shelly, I know we have our typical closing, but I'm talking to our subscribers. I'm talking to, yes, the people who show up in the Facebook group. Look, this is what we need from you. We need the likes. We need the shares. we need the comments, the feedback, right? Because when we wake up in the morning, 9 times out of 10, what we're thinking about is, what do you need?
Right.
What do you want to see? Who do you want us to interview? What topics do you want us to address? Right. So between Rochelle and I, and now Nina, who's been a phenomenal contributor. I mean, literally, you're looking at about 60 years of business experience. We're not W-2s.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not W-2s politicking as 1099. This is how we pay our bills. Right? This is how we take care of our families. This is how we eat, figuratively and literally.
Right.
So, so if you know that entrepreneurship is not necessarily, it's simple, but it's not easy. And you're looking for that one nugget, that one gem that you need to just take the lid off your business. We need your feedback, right? So this isn't a plea to share and like and comment because all of a sudden we want all this interaction and we're trying to make a buck off our presence here online. No, it's so we can become more effective at what we do. Right. So I had to get that in because we don't have that conversation enough too.
Well, just for those who aren't aware, if you're just, whether you've been around for a while or you're just tuning in, we've been doing this since 2019. This is not new. We've been doing it every week. It's not going anywhere. We've proven it's not going anywhere. So we absolutely want to make it the best it can be. And just like with anything else, you get what you put into, right? And we want our audience to feel the same, right? We're providing you with this. It's free weekly content. And we are more than happy to elevate that into whatever conversations, topics, ideas that you have, right? And that you'd like to see that you feel like is missing from here. But we need you to tell us, right? So on that, if you are not a part of our Facebook group, it's called the NextOppSocial After Show group. It is on Facebook. You can type that into Facebook, NextOppSocial After Show. You can go to the link in our description here on YouTube. That'll take you right there. We'll be happy to have you inside. Not only do we post these episodes in there, but we have further discussion around it. And we do a little bit more of that coaching and consulting in there. And we do some additional live episodes, some more behind the scenes in there as well. So that is our community space. And we want to encourage conversation there. We want to encourage conversation here on YouTube. Make sure to hit subscribe on it. Make sure to share this. I'm sure there is someone you know that needs to hear this today. So please share it. And the last part is if you visit our website at nextoppsocial.com, we do have an email sign up list there too. And I know we all get a lot of emails, but we send one a week just to recap in case you missed what you missed, so that you can consume this when you need to consume it. So please make sure to take advantage of all these areas. We hope to hear from you soon, and we will see you next week.